Beef Tracker is a Windows-based, icon-driven program. To set up your farm in Beef Tracker, you start in the top left and work left to right, beginning with the ingredients icon. You come in here and you create each ingredient that you're using on your farm. This includes giving a display name, a full description of that ingredient, entering a dry matter percentage, and you can enter in the price that you are valuing that ingredient at. Additionally, you can apply a known shrink amount to help give you a more accurate expected out of stock date. You also have an inventory control option where you can set how much inventory you have on hand of that ingredient so that it can tell you when you're going to run out. After you've set up each ingredient that your farm is using, the next icon to the right is your recipes, or your rations. You come in here and program each ration that you're feeding. Just simply click Add Ingredient and you can go down through the list and select each one that is active in that ration. Just like the ingredient screen, you have to give a display name for this ration, as this is what's going to show up on the scale head for the feeder to see. Once you put each ingredient into the ration, you can set it up how much of each ingredient is going to be fed, either on a percent of load basis, on an actual pounds per animal basis, or on a dry pounds per animal. Additionally, you have customization options such as adding in a timer to make sure that during the loading process there is the accurate amount of mix time if you so choose. For instance, this farm has a 3-minute and 30-second timer set to come up after the last ingredient is loaded, so they will mix for that long before beginning the delivery process. After you create those rations, the next icon to the right with all the cattle standing together is your pen list. So this is where you would come to create each pen that you're delivering feed to on the farm. Just like the ingredients and rations, you set a display name that's going to show up on the scale head for the truck driver to see. The number of animals is grayed out as you can't actively type in that field, but that's going to automatically populate based on the lots that you create of cattle. So when you create your lots, you say which pens those animals are in, and then it's going to automatically populate that head count in your pen screen. Down below is where you would apply the ration that pen is receiving. So for instance, this pen is receiving the SO2 ration and they're getting fed twice a day, so it's active in 2 feeding periods. You have a total of 9 feeding periods that you can populate if you want to feed the cattle multiple times per day. After you create this pen list, the next icon to the right is your lot list. This is where you would come to create each lot of cattle that you're feeding. To create a lot, you would simply click New and come in here, and you could have a whole list of customers that you're keeping track of. You have to enter in a lot number, and this has to be a custom number that's never going to be duplicated. So a lot of farms are using something like a date code to make sure that that number sequence is never duplicated, but it will be tied to this lot. All of the fields that have new next to them are completely customizable. So for instance, lot type, calves, yearling, growing, and finishing are just an option that you could use. But really you could enter in any sort of sorting mechanism in here, such as possibly dairy beef versus regular beef, or anything that's really particular to your farm to make it easier to sort reports in the future to look at the differences in those cattle. You can keep track of order buyers, the origin of where those cattle are coming from, the lot sex, and a lot market type. For instance, we put domestic or export, again completely customizable. The start date is when you're bringing those cattle into your operation and you're going to start feeding them. So that start date is when you actually start feeding them, and then when you go to close them out, the closeout date will be when they left your lot. The number of animals down here is how many are coming in with that lot, and then the average weight in is your average weight per head. After you've created your lots, now it's time to go ahead and set up sending the information out to the feed mixer. The icon with the arrow going towards the USB or towards the radio if you're using a wireless data transfer is where you would come to sort out your sending. So in the center here, we have all of the pens and rations that are going to be delivered for the day. However, on the right-hand side, you can see we have a much shorter list. That's because that is the actual loads that are going to be mixed. So So even though they have many pens that they're going to be feeding, they're actually only making 9 mixer loads because those loads are combining multiple pens if they're receiving the same ration and can fit into the mixer. You can customize what your feeding process is going to be to either have mixed loads combining or not combining, or moving the order around based on how you want to do the delivery process. When you have this all sorted to how you want to go through your loading and delivery, you would click send and either send it to your USB or via the radios out to the mixer and go ahead to start feeding. After you complete feeding and bring data back into the program, your reports are going to populate. So under here, under the feeding results, is the most popular quick access list of reports. First and foremost is the dry matter intake, as that is the most commonly used. And what you can do in here is see by pen, by date, what ration that pen was receiving, how much was supposed to be delivered versus how much feed actually got given to those cattle, how many head were in the pen that day, what your total cost was to feed them, and then what your price per animal was to feed them. And then of course on the right hand side, this column is giving you your actual dry matter pounds per head that day. If you have the Pro Plus version, you always have the option to look at a graph. So this is a nice way to be able to see visually what your trends are for dry matter intake. Some other popular reports that people like to look at would be the operator accuracy, as this is a nice way to look from a percentage standpoint at how well your feeders are doing at loading and delivering that feed, and then an overall average accuracy percentage. This can be a really nice way to make your employees become more competitive with one another and really streamline that feeding process to reduce losses by over or under loading. Down at the bottom of this reports list is cattle reports. These are the custom reports that are made for the Beef Tracker program that are really different from the TMR Tracker program. So in here we have cattle movements. This is a nice way to be able to track all of the movements that you're doing with your cattle throughout the lot. So every time you transfer them to another pen, sort them, split them out, merge them back together, this is where you keep track of that. So then you always have the option to come in here and see what kind of movements were happening and kind of trace your steps if you need to. The next option is your closed lots, just giving you the list of lots that you have closed out so that you can keep track of that and go in to see that at any time. The third option is our head days. So this is where you can come in and see by lot and by date how many animals you had on hand. So this is a nice way to see kind of a farm inventory of your cattle. So for instance, we have starting at the right hand side on May 20th, a balance of 116 head. It stays that way for a few days, and then we dispatched 97 head on May 23rd. So now our remaining balance is 19 head since then. And finally, under cattle reports, the other report would be closeout summary. So you can come into here and see a closeout statement from a lot of cattle that you have fed. At the top of the screen we have some of the equations being done, such as what your dry matter intake per head per day was, what your dry matter conversion and as-fed conversions were. And then down here kind of in the center, there's a way for you to see by ingredients, what ingredients were fed to that lot in overall pounds and then overall cost. And then at the bottom is the option to see each ration those cattle ate, the time frame they were on that ration, the days on ration, and then the total weight and total cost fed to those cattle. Another nice option over here to the right is being able to see the animals that went to the hospital, how many went to the hospital and when they were sent there. And then below that we have the option to see any dead recording. So a nice thing about this program is when you record an animal as having passed away, you can record the date of that and then also if there was any notes about it as to why they passed. And this program is going to be calculating how much feed you actually put into those animals before they passed away to give you an accurate cost of loss based on how much feed was put into them. And finally down below we have a notes section where you can add any additional information about this lot. You could enter in information about the medicine that was used on them, or just some overall yardage fees if you wanted to, or just some general notes about overall health or what happened with them, or truck drivers, or any sort of that information that was associated with this group of cattle. So that's the overall basics of our beef tracker program. A few other new things to note. Because we are keeping track of lots in this program, under events here we have the lot movements option. So anytime you're moving cattle in your operation, you just need to make sure you come back here to the program and record that those animals were moved so that the feed can follow those cattle in your reporting process. So you can bring cattle in with the lot in, sell them off with lot out, split them into multiple pens or merge them back together, transfer them just from one pen to the next, and of course if you have live cattle you're going to have some dead cattle. You could record them dead here. One other new feature to note with the beef tracker program is the bunk reader. With the bunk reader you would come in and select which feeding you're getting ready to do, and you would have this set to the drive order that you would go up to each of those pens. So you'd set up your pen order, and this is going to give you a quick snapshot at that pen's information for you to make an accurate adjustment for the day. So you can see in the top left we have what pen you're in front of. That's pen 105. Receiving recipe SO2. There's 110 head in the pen. Down below we have a nice visual of our dry matter intakes, and then the green line next to it is the bunk score if you've been actively scoring them. So you can see kind of visually how they've been trending. And then up at the top we've got 1, 3, 7, and 15 day intakes per head and dry matter intake averages. And then to the right we have the adjustments that you can make. So you can set up your scoring. You can completely customize what labels you would give to your bunk, whether it's a numerical thing like 1, 2, 3, 4, or slick, crumbs, so on and so forth. You can completely customize those labels and then customize what those labels mean as far as an adjustment. So you can make that adjustment on a total pounds per load. For instance, it's a 10,000 pound load and now you want it to be 10,500, or you can do it on a weight per head basis, a dry weight per head basis, a feeding period percentage, or a total feeding percentage for the day. The nice thing about this bunk reader is it's set to be really easy with just a couple of simple keystrokes. So you can just use the arrows on your keypad to bump them up or down, and when you get to the score that you want, you can just click enter, 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 and you're on to the next pen. So this is really handy to be able to have a laptop or a Surface running in your truck or in your gator or whatever it is that you go out and drive the feed bunks in, and make those adjustments before you start feeding for the day. So that's what's new with Digistar's Beef Tracker program. Go to Digistar's website, www.digistar.com, to see more information or contact your local TMR mixer dealer to inquire further. Thank you.